Hi, I'm Landon Barrowman, and welcome to the second lecture in this series, the Introduction to Thought Records. So let me ask you something. How many of you have ever had a misunderstanding? Pretty sure that everybody watching this has had at least one. So thought records are designed to help you with exactly that, clearing up the automatic misunderstandings that we all experience in our heads day in and day out that completely warp how we see reality. So here's the issue. Most of us don't see the world as it is. We see it through a mix of assumptions and reactions and emotional noise. And when emotions get involved, especially strong ones like fear or anger, our thoughts get distorted. We stop thinking clearly. So let me give you a perfect example. You're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off. You don't know why they cut you off or any of that, but you start assuming immediately that this person, this dickhead, this asshole hates you or wants you to die or whatever. You start getting so angry because he's literally put your life at risk. Right away, your body reacts and your heart rate jumps, your chest tightens, and then suddenly you're just pissed because a basic fear response, fight or flight, kicks in, and that fear immediately turns into anger. The next thing you know, you're screaming at this guy in your car, telling him off and flipping him off, or whatever it is that you want to do when you're heated. But if you pause for a second, you'll learn what actually happened. All you really know is that someone changed lanes in front of you. Everything else, like this guy's an asshole, he doesn't respect me, he thinks he's more important than me, that's all storytelling. That's an emotional assumption. And 99% of the time, those stories are completely negative. Rarely do you hear someone ever say, well, maybe he's just rushing to the hospital or he's in a hurry. Maybe he's having a bad day or just didn't see me. Most people default to, he's an idiot, he's reckless, or he's trying to beat me to that red light. But the truth is, most aren't even thinking about you. They're stuck in a habit. Maybe they're young, impulsive, and not really great at risk assessment just yet. But it probably has nothing to do with you personally. And that right there is a classic misunderstanding. It's exactly the kind of situation where a thought record helps. The very first thing a thought record teaches you to do is to take the emotions out of the driver's seat. It helps you pause and look at the situation and ask, what am I really reacting to here? What assumption am I making? And that's where we're going to walk through next. How to use the ABC thought record to break down these moments down so you don't have to keep living at the mercy of your reactions. So let's take a quick look back. These emotions, they distort our reality. In the example of being cut off in traffic, you instantly go into this hyper-defensive state, like that stranger on the road is out to get you. That's a massive distortion, and it needs to be examined. The same thing happens in our personal lives. Sometimes we misunderstand a loved one, and suddenly it feels like we're being personally attacked. Right here, this cognitive distortion is called personifying or taking things personally. You always hear people say that. Don't take things personally. That's because a lot of the times things aren't actually about you. This person who cut you off in traffic doesn't even know you, so why would he purposefully do that? Sometimes the things that people say or do, they don't mean for them to affect you personally, and we personify the words and the actions of others to take it as a slight against ourselves. Let me give you a more grounded example. The other day, I was cooking a nice lunch for my sister. I had everything going, and she asks, why are you using that bigger burner? And immediately, my mind went off. It's like, does she think I don't know how to cook? Does she not trust me to use my own stove? That's where my emotions wanted to take me, straight to defense. But what I could have considered, and eventually did, was this. Maybe she was just trying to be helpful. Maybe she just wanted to contribute or feel involved somehow. And this is how she expressed it. But those few seconds of defensive emotion, that's where the damage can happen. That's where doubt creeps in, where kindness starts to feel like criticism, and our whole reality gets distorted. Here I was making her a nice lunch, and suddenly I felt like I was being judged. But I took a deep breath, and I said, don't worry, I got this handled. I can cook dinner on the burner or on this next one. You can just sit, relax, and enjoy your time with me. So that deep breath That's what some therapists call somatic quieting, which, as you learned from the intro lecture, is just a nice fancy way of saying, relaxing yourself, a relaxation method. These methods help remove emotional charge from the moment. They're fast. And this is the thing. The more you practice them, like that box breathing I taught you in the first one, the more that it can become automatic. Just like with this ABCD method of thought records. So you start catching your own distortions in real time. That voice in your head might say, they're mad at me, they're criticizing me. But now, instead of just believing it, you pause and go, wait, what happened? That's just my brain jumping to crazy conclusions again. And once you get good at this, those moments will stop ruining your life. All right, so now we're gonna get into the material and the bones of this thing. If you follow along, you're gonna need a pen and a paper or whatever's in front of you. And you could just say, you need to write down A, B, C, D. Or you put a cross through the middle of your page and label those 4 boxes A, B, C, D. If you don't have pen or paper right now, that's okay. You can follow along the book if you've got it, or just watch for now and try it later. But I highly recommend writing it down now while I'm going through this when you're ready. You can pause and grab those things. Here's why. I've done tons of these, and what I've noticed is that you keep having the same thought patterns over and over and over. You might go through the same argument in your head like 20 times, but once you've written it out and you've disputed enough, you get to a point where you can say, wait, I've already solved this. This thing again, I've dealt with that, right? And that repetitive power, it breaks that loop. Eventually, that thought loses its power and grip on you, and you start to realize, maybe I'm just more sensitive to criticism than I thought. Maybe I tend to take things personally that aren't personal at all. And once you know that about yourself, you can start changing how you respond. And that's what this exercise is for, self-discovery, and eventually self-regulation. So let's break it down. A stands for activating event. The B stands for the beliefs about the event. C is the consequences of your actions that happen following the event. And D will be disputing that event, usually with cognitive distortions and other ways of reframing how that could be viewed. D is where the real magic happens, this disputes. You challenge the thought, you poke holes in it, you hold it up to the light and ask, is this actually true? Do I have evidence for this belief? Or am I just believing it arbitrarily? Is there another way to see this? The work happens all the way through the process, but D, that's where the shift starts. That's where you start retraining your brain. Okay, so the activating event. Let's go back to the beginning of the thought record. We're looking at the letter A, the activating event. Wherever you've written A, and where it's at the top of your list or on the left, so that cross of your page, you're gonna write down what happened. So here's the key to this. You wanna describe what happened through a neutral lens. That means don't swear or use any kind of emotional language. Let's just say the thought in your head is, my boss came into the lunch trailer and started fucking talking to me like he doesn't know that it's my lunch break because he's a fucking idiot, Now, I'm sure that's how you felt, but is that what actually happened? So when we take away all that emotional language and the anger away from it, all that happened was your boss walked into your trailer on your lunch break. That's what you write there. So that's it. No judgment, no emotion, just the facts. Let's try that road rage example, right? Your brain might be going, this idiot swerved across 3 lanes and nearly killed me. But the activating event should actually just say that on paper. A driver changed lanes and entered my lane in front of me quite abruptly or quickly. Scared me, Again, that's neutral. Same with the lunch example with my sister. Your mind might scream, she's always criticizing me and telling me how to cook in my own damn kitchen. But the activating event should be, my sister recommended I use a different burner while I was cooking, and it made no sense to me. Even take out that it made no sense to me, because that's emotional. I must be still quite pissed about it. It might take practice to strip the emotion out, but that's the point. Once you separate the event from the emotion, you can start to see where the emotion kicked in. And that's what gives you power over it. So remember, When you're writing your activating event, don't describe how you feel about it. Just describe what happened, plain and simple. Okay, so for B, this is where we can describe what happened to us with our feelings, adjusting it. These are the beliefs about it. So when we start describing, how we felt about getting cut off, we can start saying things like, people don't respect me, nobody knows how to drive, all these kind of things. That's important to write here because you need to understand what you believe about that event. This helps you really see the situation, even if it's ugly. It's your mental situation. We're exploring your beliefs and emotional reactions to what happened. So now here's the key question. Why do these thoughts hold so much power? It's not like you actually believe that every stranger on the road is out to get you and the whole city is just filled with people trying to disrespect you. That's your emotions coloring your beliefs. Look, reckless driving happens. Yeah, but there are idiots on the road. But are they worth you losing your peace over? Let's just try that boss example again. Your belief might be, he doesn't respect my time. He doesn't care what I've been through. All he cares about is money. And now pause. Is that really true? Does this guy, all he cares about is money? Or could it be that, he's under stress too? That's called reframing. You're reframing it. You're putting yourself in his shoes to see what possible reason he could have. And you know what? There's probably a million of them. This guy might have lived an entire life with ups and downs, and this one moment he got under your skin, and now suddenly you're rewriting his entire character over one interaction. That's the kind of thing that can shape how you treat him for days, weeks, without even realizing it. The same with my sister. One belief was, does she think I can't use my own stove? Does she think I can't make a grilled cheese? Another one is, why does she always criticize me? And that last one, that always, that's a huge red flag. Anytime you hear yourself saying things like, why does this always happen to me? They're always like this. You're probably falling into a cognitive distortion because the truth is nothing is always. No one is 100% one way all the time. And if you're thinking in black and white terms like that, you're reacting from emotion, not reason. That's called polarized thoughts. That's why this section matters. Write down as many beliefs as you can, even if they're uncomfortable, even if they sound irrational. Get them out. You can't challenge what you first don't acknowledge. There's one more thing I want to highlight in the belief section, and this one gets deep. So when you start writing out your beliefs, you may run into phrases like, I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not skilled enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not worthy enough. And these are what I call the core vulnerability statements. And they show up a lot more than you might expect. They often sit underneath the surface of our anger and anxiety, and they're like little pressure points that we've been defending against for years. When something triggers that feeling, even if it's small, like a comment about which stove burner to use, I'm not smart enough to figure that out, you can feel like someone's attacking your worth, and that's where the emotional spike comes from. But here's the truth. Most of the time, no one else sees you that way. You've been carrying around that belief and reacting from it your whole life. And the irony is, you're defending yourself against something the world doesn't even judge you for. You're defending yourself against yourself. Uncovering those beliefs takes courage, but once you see them, you can challenge them. And once you challenge them enough, they start to lose their grip. All right, so the next one is consequences. And this one is where we see how the beliefs that we have made consequences happen in our lives. So we look at what comes from us having these beliefs about this. So what happened because I believed that thought? Well, let's go back to the road rage example. A guy cuts you off and your belief is, well, this guy doesn't respect me. Now, what's the consequence? Maybe you screamed at him. Maybe you laid on the horn and drove aggressively and cut him off too. You blast your music the whole way you're driving because you're just furious. Maybe it ruined your whole day. You're rattled and you miss your turn and you show up all tense at work. Those are your consequences. A cascade of reactions from one tiny moment on the road, they can really mess you up. So the same with the sister example, She questions what burner I'm using, and the belief is she thinks I'm an idiot. And the consequences could have been me losing my cool, me snapping at her, me ruining what was to be a nice moment. And the same with your boss. He walks into the trailer while you're having lunch and fuck, I've seen guys get so mad, they're ready to quit. They're ready to knock them out. They're screaming and they get everybody else all riled up around them saying, talking about union rights and bosses can't be in the lunch trailers talking about work right now. What's the big deal? It's 10 seconds. And that whole situation can be solved with a little conversation. So some guys think that kind of behavior makes them look tough. But more often, people see it as immature, unstable, or ridiculous. That's not how most of us want to be seen at work. No one wants to be known as the guy who's always blowing his lid. Even sadness has consequences. You might feel worthless and go binge drinking. You might stay in bed all day, turn off your phone, and isolate. That was me. So these consequences, these actions and emotions are just as important to track as well as the belief itself, because they tell you how much control that belief has over your life. Just look what that emotion, what those beliefs did to you. All right, so now we're at D. This is where we write the different types of ways to dispute this. I've already kind of went over a few of them, and I'm going to go over a lot more of them in the next lecture. This is one of the most important steps in the whole thought record process. But for now, I just want to introduce it and walk you through how it works. So far, you've written down what happened, you've identified your beliefs, and you've named the feelings and behaviors that came from it. So now it's time to challenge all those beliefs. We do that by identifying something called cognitive distortions. These are the patterns in your thinking that aren't really grounded in reality or logic. They're habits that we've built up over time, ways of interpreting the world that aren't really accurate but feel real. They're little mental shortcuts that we use. And once you start to see them, you can call them out. You can say, wait a second, that's not true, or that's just me reacting emotionally. So let's run through some of these examples using the scenarios we talked about. Say your belief is that my boss doesn't respect me. That's a distortion called personalization that we talked about. You're making the situation all about you, but maybe your boss is just stressed, like we said. Maybe he needs to talk about something important. It's not about disrespect, it's about timing. With the sister example, I thought she's always criticizing me. Again, these two things, it's two distortions at once. The always thinking and, personalization again. She's always criticizing me. Every time you're thinking any always or should statements, that's a really important cognitive distortion. You're polarizing those thoughts. And the should statements that come into, she should know better. She should just say thank you. When you hear yourself saying should or always, you're reacting emotionally, not rationally. In the road rage example, you might say, this guy cut me off because he thinks he's better than me or he's rich and he doesn't worry about shit like that. And he's in a rush because he thinks his time matters more than me. That's all a cognitive distortion called fortune telling. You're assuming so much about this stranger's life. You're literally writing him a whole script and a story arc. You're assuming things about his life, his car, his job, his priorities with no evidence. This guy's just moments in your life and you've written a whole story about him. You could also be doing something called catastrophizing, which is just blowing things way out of proportion, right? This could have killed me. That's catastrophizing. People like this, they shouldn't be on the road. You're escalating the danger far beyond what happened. So what do? You look at these beliefs and you name the distortion behind each one. And once you do that, the thought starts to lose its grip. You go, okay, I'm just catastrophizing this. Or, you know what? That's not the full story. I'm fortune telling. I have no idea what that guy's life is like. So this is why disputation works. Disputation is where you build that mental strength. You learn to start giving people grace, and more importantly, you learn to give yourself grace. You stop expecting perfection. You stop writing stories in your head about what other people are thinking, and you stop letting every little small inconvenience feel like a personal attack. The big one, you stop overreacting to your own vulnerabilities. The big picture is the thought records help you track it all. How you think, how you feel, how you behave. And when you know that, you can actually start to change it. So in the next lecture, we're going to start to break down the full list of cognitive distortions and a few extra things that I want to show you. You'll see examples and probably recognize a few that show up in your life regularly. And you'll learn how to call them out in real time before they take over. Thanks so much for joining me. If you made it to lecture 2, I'm already proud of you. You're doing more than some guys will do for their own mental health. My name's Landon Barrowman. This is a Triskel production, and you're watching the online guide to the working man's guide for mental health. Thanks a lot.